Alrighty then, it looks like we've got a pretty good gathering already, and I would just like to welcome everyone and say hello. And on behalf of the entire team here at Tourism Cares, welcome to our webinar, Places to Love, a community tourism chat with Samantha Brown and JoAnna Haugen. My name is Paula Vlamings, and I'm the Chief Impact Officer for Tourism Cares, and I'm really excited to be with you all for this important conversation with two of the leading voices in responsible tourism. I do need to share a few housekeeping notes, which we have to do at every webinar, but I would like to ask you all to please use the chat function to interact with us today. Our team will be posting the links to the chat for any programs or opportunities mentioned during the conversation in that chat. And we have reserved some time at the end for Q&A, so please use the Q&A function to ask questions for our panelists, and we will try to address them all at the end. Closed captioning is also available, and this webinar will be recorded and circulated in a follow-up email. So before I dive in with our panelists, I just wanted to give a little bit of background information for those of you that aren't familiar with our organization, Tourism Cares. For the past 20 years, we've been dedicated to ensuring that travel is used as a force for good. We are a sustainable tourism nonprofit whose mission is to serve as a catalyst for positive social, environmental, and economic impact for the people and places of travel. We support travel companies and organizations, large and small, from every sector by providing resources, education, and programming to advance their sustainability journeys. And we also support tourism communities by facilitating connections to the industry to empower our members to employ and support local change makers and community-based enterprises. And we do this work because at the core of every tourism experience is a community that has to thrive in order for our businesses to thrive. We travel on their land, we use precious resources and water, we soak up their culture, and we swim in their oceans. And we want healthy environments to support the wildlife we want to see, and we want clean beaches and communities free of crime. So it's really important that we invest in them and that we partner with local change makers and locally owned businesses at the grassroots level to make sure that those places actually do thrive and that tourism actually is used as a force for good. This is our product. These are the communities that we need to take care of. So that's why community-owned tourism and community-led tourism is critical to a sustainable destination. It means working directly with local communities in the planning, development, and management of how they want tourism in their community and what stories do they want told. So they need to have this ownership because we have to work to create sustainable livelihoods and improve the socioeconomic conditions in those communities for our own businesses to thrive. Plus, it also gives travelers a more authentic and immersive and rich experience, and it's a better, more sustainable future all around. So that's the universe in which Tourism Cares operates. And of course, the media plays a very, very important role in how tourism develops for local communities, both good and bad. And in this webinar today, we'll be focusing on how travel professionals who sell, market, and promote travel can integrate more community-centric experiences into their storytelling and into their travels. And we've got two very seasoned travel writers today to share their own personal experiences with community tourism and how to build a better sustainable storytelling into your business. But before I introduce them, Samantha and JoAnna, if you could come on camera with me. Before I introduce them, I would like to, I'll go ahead and introduce them first, and then we can maybe dive into the program. First, I'll introduce Samantha. Samantha Brown has been traveling professionally for over 25 years, creating 230 hours of travel television. She began her career at the Travel Channel and is now the executive producer and writer of the travel series Places to Love, which is the #1 rated travel series on public television. Samantha is the recipient of 2 Daytime Emmys, and 1 for Outstanding Host and the other for Outstanding Travel Program. And I've been watching Samantha for as long as I can remember and love her show. And we also have JoAnna Haugen. JoAnna is an award-winning writer, speaker, consultant, and solutions advocate who has worked in the communications-related positions in the travel and tourism industry her entire career. She is the founder of Rooted, a solutions platform at the intersection of sustainable tourism, social impact, and storytelling. And I've read JoAnna and have cheered her on for all of her storytelling as well. So before we jump into our conversation, I wanted to ask you both sort of what got you into this kind of story, sustainability and positive impact. And certainly what was that? Was that an aha moment for you or an evolution? And before we do that, I just want to share my story, because it was very early in my work career. I was in my early 30s, It was my first trip to Africa, and we were in a safari camp, and I could see down in the dry riverbed that they were filling a 5,000-liter water cistern every single day at a well that had been dug in the riverbank. And I went down there the next day to help pump the well. And as I was doing that, people from the village about an hour away were coming with their jerry cans to fill up with water. And we would stop the pumping and we would let them fill up their jerry cans. And there were women with large jerry cans down to little kids with little kid-sized jerry cans. And they were walking that water, whatever water they could carry, back to their community an hour away. And it hit me that the camp had water, the camp had a well, and the community did not. And it was a profound sort of inequity that hit me, where I didn't feel good. And I certainly didn't feel like it was right. And the next morning, when the camp crew asked me if I wanted a second bucket from the fire to wash my hair, after weeks of saying yes, I said no. And so it was this transformative experience for me, and one where I now question, do we need bathtubs and do we need swimming pools in Africa? So it was a trigger for me, but I wonder for both of you, was it an evolution or an aha moment, and kind of what got you into feeling compelled that this is the kind of storytelling that you want to tell? So Samantha, I'll start with you, and maybe just weave that into a background and give us your story.
Sure, that's a very profound experience, definitely. I feel like for me, I started out in the Travel Channel, whereas me going like theme parks and kind of doing the greatest hits. And for the show, I wanted to do something differently. I wanted to do a show that was really about being less of a consumer and more a part of the community. And so we always, we still always do local businesses, very community grounded businesses, but then we started to interact with more nonprofits and just grassroots organizations that were really making a change within the community. And we, as a team, just thought we need to make this a part of the show. And so the aha moment really came after COVID, after we'd been doing it kind of piecemeal here and there. We really made a concerted effort to put one segment. We do about 8 in each episode, eight segments, making one segment of each episode something totally dedicated to a nonprofit or grassroots organization that is working to make the world a better place, one community at a time. And travelers have a real power with their money to support these when they go. And it's more personal experience as well. So that's sort of when it really happened. After COVID, it became more, oh, we need to support communities, because it just became a part of what everyone really wanted to do.
That's amazing, and a recent development, and such a big platform to have that story. How about you, JoAnna?
So you had mentioned that I've been working in communications related positions my entire career, which is true. But before that, I actually was a US Peace Corps volunteer living in a small rural village in Kenya. And during monsoon season, our village was cut off from the closest paved road, the tarmac, and we lived in the Rift Valley. So it was a very hilly area. We had a dirt road, and we couldn't easily get to Thika, which was our closest town where we would do our grocery shopping and things like this. At the time, checking our email at the post office. And one day during monsoon season, we needed to get to Thika. We needed to reach the tarmac. And there was a van going to Thika. We got in the van, and as we were coming down a hill, the van got stuck. And I thought, well, what are we going to do from here? There are kilometers behind us to walk back to the village, or kilometers ahead of us to walk to the paved road. And the young men in our van jumped out, broke off banana leaves from the trees around us, and proceeded to essentially lay down a road in front of the van. While it made its way up hills, they would jump in the van, we'd get to the bottom, the guys would jump out, lay the banana leaves, and we would continue on our way, all the way to the tarmac. And at that moment, I realized that there are brilliant local solutions all around the world that we might not be aware of because of the environments we lived in, because of the access or privileges that we have where we lived. So that has always stuck in my mind. Now, fast forward to the career part of my post Peace Corps life. And I worked in travel writing. I was a full-time consumer-facing travel writer for many, many years, where, you know, they say it's one of the greatest jobs in the world. And I can't disagree with that, right? I had the opportunity to travel all over the world, visit incredible places, meet incredible people. But I very early on began to see that there was a disconnect between what destinations were trying to share with the world, the truly unique and valuable aspects of those places, their really special people, culture, history, was simply not being shared with media, with content creators, because that was not the story that, you know, hit the highlights, right? As travelers were, or as media was fly by and in and out, hitting the greatest hits, and on they went. And so there was a great disconnect in what I was experiencing and the stories that I was being asked to tell and what the true value was in these communities. There were also very murky, ethical gray areas. And so I wanted to find a way to help and support my colleagues, destinations, tour operators, service providers, tell those stories and surface those really unique experiences that exist already in a way that is respectful of the environment and people, that does contribute to the holistic community well-being of the places around the world. And one of the things that I am very passionate about is being a solutions advocate. And what I mean by that is finding those social initiatives, finding those local solutions, the global challenges all over the world, and using tourism as a vehicle to really share those stories. And that comes from that first experience where I saw genius, brilliance getting us from our tiny village, Kiumbwini, to Thika, because this is happening everywhere around the world. And so how can we use tourism to share that story? So I founded Rooted in order to support my colleagues in this space to share that story.
That's so important to share what can go on in terms of local solutions, and the local people have their own solutions. And I think one of the things that's really interesting, it just sparked a question for me right off the bat for both of you. And JoAnna, I know you've written about tour operators and destinations working with nonprofits, and certainly highlighting the opportunity for those nonprofits to benefit from the travel dollars, as you mentioned, Samantha. From both of you, just do you see an increase in tour operators or destinations really finding these nonprofits and working for them or working with them in order for you to be able to amplify and to tell those stories? Samantha, do you feel that you're getting the uptick in sort of the interest and the opportunity to work with nonprofits in the field?
Absolutely. I think DMOs have, especially in the United States, maybe not so much in Europe when we've been there, or Asia, but definitely here in the United States, that idea that we really need, the traveler today really wants to connect personally, as personal as possible, and really use their money in the wisest way that really stays in that community. That is, I believe, a really well-known travel initiative as a person, as a traveler. And DMOs know this, that they need to put those out there as well. And so I feel like it's become an easier question to ask to kind of understand what's out there, because as someone not from those states, I don't know. So I really do rely on the kindness of strangers, and as well as a lot of, internet searching, but the internet does not have everything. So you really rely on the people in their state, in their tourism offices, travel agents, whoever, to really spread the word and know their communities.
And do you find that they know where to look, or are you helping them know where to look?
We can certainly help them because we have a specific ask. If we are highlighting a nonprofit, it has to be something that the traveler can interact with. It can't just be this like office off to the side. There has to be a bridge, a connection to that nonprofit that anyone can show up to, participate in, help, be aware of. It can't just be me having sort of a VIP sort of documentary style of what happens here behind the scenes. This is full front, people are aware of what's happening and you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And JoAnna, I know you've written about nonprofits working with tour operators specifically. Do you have, in terms of your storytelling and the opportunity that presents, do you find that there's room to be increasing that opportunity, or do you see where you're understanding that they see the value as well?
I think I agree with Samantha that we're seeing it more today and more every day than we have in the past, but I also think there's room for improvement. And I think that's because we're not thinking creatively enough quite yet. The really unique thing about travelers is that they have to eat, they have to move around, they have to sleep. It's not just that they're experiencing things or that they're participating in attractions and activities, and certainly they are doing that as well. But if they need to do all these other basic things, there are huge opportunities within destinations to find social impact projects and initiatives and efforts that are centering community first, and also providing a way for travelers to meet their needs of eating, sleeping, moving around. And so these initiatives exist. These kind of social impact organizations are in communities all over the globe. Tourism Cares has found many of them and put them on the meaningful map. But I don't think yet that we've done a great job of bridging these kinds of initiatives with destinations and travelers, because these kinds of businesses aren't thought of as being part of tourism. They are community centric, and they can be part of the tourist experience and story. And so we are seeing more of this, but I would love to see a lot more of it, because more of these kinds of initiatives are out there.
That's a really good point, because when we are asking, we have to ask the question. It's not a part of their docket. It's sort of a special mention category. And I totally agree. They need to be upfront, top 5, things to do, how to interact with the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your point, I think they're difficult to find, but you're rooting them out, JoAnna, no pun intended, and certainly your shows are bringing that to the forefront too, Samantha. So when you both are scouting for a story or doing a site visit or even traveling personally, what are some of the ways that you really look to connect with community? I mean, how does that process really work for you?
Well, one of the things that I've done as a journalist, but these are things that I also do as a traveler, which I think is really pertinent to realize, is I personally seek out background context that is not part of the tourism story. Again, I do look at the destination's website, and I look at what's being offered and promoted in that space, but I'm always asking myself, what is the story that's not being shared here? Who are the people that are not being heard? And I always do some background research about, again, what are the local challenges that are happening here that I should know about as a journalist, and I should know about as a traveler, so that I'm acting respectful, but also I'm able to communicate that with people in the course of my work. The other thing I love to do, which you probably guessed by now, is I'm always looking for the change makers. I'm always looking for the social impact initiatives. And I'm always thinking about, if I want to go kayaking or I want to go hiking, what else can I do to turn this into an active learning experience or opportunity that in some way supports community initiatives and community well-being? So I am actively looking for the change makers as well. Again, those are the stories that are not being told. They're not part of the common narrative of these places. So those stories deserve space. They deserve platform, time. And I think they're more interesting. It's the story about places that we don't know, about the people who we haven't heard from in the past. Yeah. How do you do it, Samantha? I'd love to hear how you scout these kinds of stories.
So we're really lucky in that we reserve a part of our budget, which is not a lot, to a pre-production phase. So before I show up with our cameras and our sound and our director and producer, we have my executive producer or director goes about 3 weeks before to that destination and has a list of people they are going to meet for the next 5 days. And in that list is probably 20 different experiences that could be in Places to Love. And we meet everyone face to face and we talk to them. We meet the person who I'm going to be on camera with. We find out what makes them tick. What is the emotional value of being in this place? And from those, that 20, it gets whittled down to 8. And in that 8, we feel like we have got what this place is about. Now, we're outsiders. We haven't been there. We're not the locals, but we feel like we've got this great mix of people who own businesses, local businesses, or have the nonprofits, and we figure out basically how the idea is to get to know a place by what it's known for, but then just like what you said, well, what is it not known for and who's doing that? So just simply, like if you're in Asheville, North Carolina, and everyone's doing beer, it's really hard for us to pick the beer place to do in Asheville, North Carolina, but maybe someone else is doing something different and they're doing spirits. And so we're going to feature them. And so they're a local community. They make a spirit that's basically born of foraging and sort of the doctors who didn't have any medicine, so they had to create things back in the days when there weren't hospitals, and so now you're getting a more interesting story because it's actually an opposite of the mainstream, but they're still there and it's still born of the same effort. So I guess that's the main point, is that we meet everyone. We don't just believe people, on what they say on their website. We're really going there, boots on the ground, to find out what's happening. And then, we always like to go where everyone goes, because we're not trying to create total, it's not just going off the beaten path. It's just not where you thought to look. So if you've got the main street, we always do the side street walks. We just walk and like, what's that little business over there? Because the main street has all like the really successful businesses, but what's that business that's 2 blocks over on the parallel streets? So we sort of go where everyone's going, but use that as a jumping off place for something a little more local, a little more interesting. So that's kind of how we cobble together, but it's always, what's this place about? We can show that, but maybe show how someone's doing it differently. But then what's the opposite of what's going on here? And that kind of leads us to some just more the interesting, like you said, the change makers, because every place is evolving. But we let the locals tell us who they are. We don't go in with any sort of, okay, this is what we think this place is about, and we're just going to fit you all in this box. It's about kind of understanding the place beforehand, and then we show up 3 weeks later with our cameras, because we have to have permission to be there. I think people don't understand that. Like, we just can't show up and start rolling. Everyone has to agree to be on camera. They have to sign releases. We have to have insurance. Like, there's a lot more to it. So we have to be a little more non-spontaneous, I guess, when I get there. But that's how it's basically done.
And that's just a really great point too, Samantha, getting something off the beaten path, but on the main drag. I think that's something that Tourism Cares really focuses on as well, because we need to spread those benefits around. Mm-hmm. So a lot more people benefit from the tourism dollar, and to get them too far afield, you're going to lose that, that critical mass. So I think that's a really important point, to look for those opportunities just off, because everyone's going to do the bucket list things and they want to go to those things that they're known for. But wow, there's so many people doing incredible stuff just mm-hmm. off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you both, I know that you both are committed to the community tourism model, and I just want to ask where you've seen it done really well and where you've seen it done not so well. And for the stories that you tell, certainly the show is called Places to Love, and there's a lot to love in those communities, but do you tell stories of things that aren't going as well, or do you find that to be a problem in sort of how you structure what you share?
No, we don't show things that aren't going well. They don't make it to the show. Again, we're not a documentary. It's not a news show. I would say where it's gone very well, one of my favorite businesses that we've ever shown is the only nonprofit fashion house in the United States. It's in Houston, Texas. It's called Magpies and Peacocks. Not only is it a nonprofit, all the materials used by their fashion designers are reclaimed materials. Nothing is, they take it from Restoration Hardware to Banana Republic, massive bolts of fabric that were just bound for for the trash heap. They save it. Not only do they do that, but they also are nearby a women's shelter. So they reach out to that women's shelter and they said, do you want to learn how to sew? Because if you know how to sew, you have a skill that is so bankable that will empower you with financial security. And they bring these women in and they give them an internship that they pay them for all the while. So they're just, they're triangulating all of the issues of one community with, where, our trash heaps are getting too big. Fashion is a big problem with that. And then the designers themselves can become from the women's shelters and they're teaching other women's skills. And so it just, for me, it hit every single box of what a business can do. And what's so important in this is they have a shop that you can walk into and you see everyone in the background working. You see the fashion designers, you see the big bolts of fabric, and you can shop for the clothes, the jewelry, everything they make is from reclaimed products. So where it doesn't work with us and where we sort of get frustrated is when there's a nonprofit that doesn't have, that's doing fabulous work, but they're not set up to meet the public. Because the traveler is the public. There is no person or people to be that bridge to take people through. And I understand this is a different level of interacting with the public, and some nonprofits, they just don't have that, bandwidth to bring that on. But if a DMO and a tourism with their tourism dollars could see this nonprofit is doing so well, how do we bring that out? How do we create something that a traveler could interact with and know what's happening here? That would be just, I think, really empowering to the people of that community. There is tourism dollars to do that, to show, because this is what's happening. This is sort of those feel-good moments of the community really helping each other. So that's where it goes wrong. There's no one there to take us through. There's no point. There's no, I don't want it public facing front where we can interact with.
Yep, and that's critical. And certainly there's a lot of organizations that do that development. We certainly support some of the consultants that go in and make that connection. And certainly if tour operators are willing to invest and sort of create that connection, that bridge, the payback is huge, because they bring that in. It's a very authentic experience and they create a real sustained income for that community. So JoAnna, what about you? Some good examples to share, or some that you don't tell about or maybe haven't told about?
Well, I think that a lot of the initiatives that work really well work because they are focused on the community first. They exist to provide to the marginalized community that they are founded for, or they're focused on that first. Now, there is that part where they need to be tourism ready, and obviously at that point, then they can welcome in travelers. But I feel like the things that don't work are those things where they're like, oh, we need to have a greater good, let's slap something on top of this thing we already have. The best ones, I think, are the ones that exist for their social purpose or their environmental goal first, and then they become tourism ready. I actually just got back from a few weeks traveling in India, and it was my intention while I was there to find some of these kinds of organizations that exist. And so I have some top of mind that I think are really good examples. In Jaipur, for example, there is a company called Pink City Rickshaw, which is employing about 40 women to be tuk-tuk drivers and give tours of the city in a city with millions of people and thousands of tuk-tuk drivers. There are only this handful of women who are giving these tours. The initiative exists to provide those women with livelihood and agency over their own, work and lives. And they're using tourism to do that. That was a very unique experience as a solo woman traveler. It was really fantastic to be in the tuk-tuk with Renu, who I loved when a car driven by a man pulled up to ask her for directions. I was like, yeah, it was just so awesome, right? In Agra, there's a cafe called Shiro's Cafe, which exists and employs women who are survivors of acid attacks. Again, a marginalized community in India, and this cafe exists. Travelers need to eat, so let's have them eat at She Bros, where we're supporting women. We're supporting women who are part of a marginalized community in India. So, you know, these kinds of initiatives work because they are born out of the desire to support a certain community or support a certain initiative or purpose. And then tourism is the vehicle through which that support is given. And that's what I think we see the most successful ones and versus those that kind of throw that on top of the thing they're already offering.
Yes, and those stories that you both tell about those opportunities to engage with tourism are the ones that if we could get all of media to be telling those stories, we would have a lot more traction because they exist in every corner of the world. And certainly both of those examples, shopping and transportation, the supply chain of the tour operator and the DMO, like all of those are touch points that could really integrate this community-based experience that travelers are looking for, and certainly that make for great stories. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and ask you both a question about social media. And I know you're both not in social media per se, but it is a part of all of our lives every day. And so I just kind of wanted to get what role do you think it plays, or what role shouldn't it play in promoting this kind of tourism versus mass tourism?
Personally, I mean, if we're talking about travel influencers, I love them. I think travel influencers have been able to show a type of traveler that one doesn't get to be on TV. We get to see travelers who have disabilities or different abilities. We get to see travelers who are of different races, different body shapes, everything. And I believe it's just become this amazing equalizer and understanding of who's out there enjoying, and that it's not just, we're not just these standard travelers. I know for me, I have a challenge because I'm a particular traveler. I look a certain way. There's only so many people I can truly represent when people just look at me. And so I think for one, it's so important that these travel influencers are respected, and we know the good ones, and we know the ones who are just out there to get free trips, right? We know that. But the ones who are good and the message they are spreading to generations far younger than us, I think knock it out of the park.
JoAnna?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I kind of use this line that we are all influencers, and I don't think of myself as, you know, a travel influencer in the way that people think of travel influencers, right? But people look to their family, their friends, their colleagues, the people that they trust in their lives to provide inspiration and insight. And if you work in tourism, the truth is that your friends and your family and your colleagues are looking to you when they're thinking about travel. And so in that way, we are all influencers, and it does matter the way that we present our stories through our social media channels. It matters what behavior we model for those people who are close to us and those people who maybe casually follow the work or stories that we pursue in our lives. All that said, I agree with Samantha that I think travel influencers are fantastic. I mean, these are people all around the globe who are having a wide variety of experiences that, you know, traditional travel journalists can't be in all these places. They're not reporting live. Travel influencers give you those little snippets of their days and their moments and their experiences. And unfortunately, I believe that the tourism industry at large, meaning DMOs, tour operators, experience providers, have not fully embraced the opportunity to develop relationships with media, content creators, influencers that they maybe should have. Because we, and I say we meaning those of us working in the tourism industry, kind of tend to shun travel influencers a lot. They are ruining travel. They are, causing over tourism. And my question is, well, why didn't we do a better job of inviting these people into our space? Because they are part of the tourism ecosystem. Why aren't they part of our space so that they're aware of the kinds of stories that we want to share, so that they're aware of what our goals are in creating a sustainable and responsible and intentional and meaningful future for tourism? We have a responsibility to share stories and our vision with the people who are the frontline storytellers about tourism. Last week, actually, I know that Tourism Cares had a panel conversation with a variety of DMOs about marketing, and I really loved what the representative from Detroit was talking about, because he was talking about a campaign that they had where they were working with influencers and travel content creators who were from Detroit, who had skin in the game, quite frankly, for the way that their city was portrayed and the way the stories about Detroit were being shared with the world. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us not always to be using these flyby content creators, and there's value there for sure. But I think we have a great opportunity to think about how can we use our own ambassadors in our own communities to share that story, because they are our best word of mouth ambassadors. They are stewards for their own communities. And so I think I love the influencer, and I think we can do a better job working with them so that we're all on the same page in a more meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, he was great. And Samantha, for you, when you're in your collaborations with DMOs or even tour operators, or what do you think could be done better, or what would you like to see? What really works for you, and what would you like to see? To JoAnna's point, how can we work better how can we make those collaborations more fruitful and certainly more impactful for the traveler?
Well, I love what JoAnna said about the person from Detroit. I think that's a great start, is really reaching out to its own local community. But it's also about, if you've got these amazing stories to tell, find the right person to tell it. I think that's the overall point. I have definitely come upon challenges where maybe we want to, we're in a Western state and we're talking about Native American lands. Where's the Native American person to talk about that? I shouldn't be with a white park ranger. Where is that person? So I think for DMOs to understand their story, but who gets to tell that story? And are they directly a part of that community? We had a great interaction in Nashville, North Carolina. There is an area called the Block, and it was in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, a part of a vibrant Black community. It was their downtown. And of course, it was bulldozed over for urban renewal. But the Block is coming back, and you can get a great tour of the Block and this famous YMCA that was there, that's been brought back as well by a man named Wayne Barton, who does this total grassroots tour, just walking tour. Sometimes you're in his Cadillac, and he's fabulous, but he's of the community. And I think that's so important, that we don't just have these like placeholders of people telling the story, to find the person who gets to tell the story, who actually has that, has that connection to it. So that's where I would hope that DMOs are now venturing into, okay, we've got this great story, who gets to tell it?
Yeah, and you've touched on this both a little bit, but in terms of sourcing those opportunities, how do you both go about really, there's the Google, but then there's also, for us, we do a lot of just talking to people and going through and trying to find out where those are. Do you have any advice for tour operators and DMOs to how you go and sort of root these great stories out and find out how they might be connected to your business or to your promotions?
Well, I want to know what JoAnna has to say. She's the journalist. She's the rooter.
Honestly, I keep this spreadsheet because my radar is always up. And so I'm always listening to what people say. I'm reading articles, content that's not about tourism. And I'm all the time asking, who are the storytellers? Who are the change makers? What are they doing that could be part of the tourism experience? So honestly, I'm constantly keeping a spreadsheet where I'm able to see, oh, this is what's in India, and this is, you know, what's in this place or that place. Because again, we get really caught up in the tourism silo, but what are the travel related things? One of the things I like to do, well, there are a few things I do. I always try to find if there's like a free weekly publication in a destination, because that's a publication that is for the local residents. It's about the things that are going on. It's about the people who are in the community that are doing things. And so I like to look for that free weekly and see if something like that exists, see what events are happening while I'm there, not just, you know, the things that would be considered travel or related, maybe like a festival or something like that, but is there an opportunity for me to participate in, you know, a park cleanup while I'm there? And okay, if there is, then who are the people that are there? Let's have a conversation with them. So, you know, always kind of let that, you know, bloodhound sense lead you down the next road as it is. One of the other things that I do use, and it is the Google, is I'll type in a destination, then I'll type in social impact or social enterprise or nonprofit, and just start looking at what kind of organizations exist, or community organizations or initiatives, and then contact them. So if there is, for example, an Indigenous association that is in the region I'm going to be in, contact them. Do you offer, is there anybody there who offers any sort of tour or experience where people can come and hear the stories told by the Indigenous communities? So again, thinking outside that travel box, I'm looking to see who is in the community that might have the other ties within a community that lead me down the road to the organizations, the people, the innovative local solutions, and the active learning opportunities that I might be able to participate in.
Yeah, I'm there with JoAnna, totally. It's like local newspapers. I start to look, what's the local newspaper? Because the journalism is still there, the writing is still there, and you just see, you know, everything from pancake breakfasts to, you know, flower shows, and then from there it just leads you to the next thing. If I really love a business in a city or a nonprofit, I follow them on Instagram and I read everything they do, because then they point the finger to, hey, this, you know, this is happening. And so if we say want to do like a really great outside bar, right? But bars, I mean, for us, that's kind of what's the story behind that bar? Well, if every Thursday, and we find this out through Instagram or through local papers, every Thursday, everybody brings their dogs and somebody bakes dog biscuits and they sell the dog biscuits for $5, and all that money goes to the local pet shelters where you can actually walk a dog, you know, every Sunday. And you're like, oh, now you're firing on all cylinders. You're like, okay, we're going to show the bar. We're going to be there with all the dogs. People are going to love it because people love watching dogs on television. We're then going to walk the dog on Saturday, and it just gives us half of our show, because everything just leads to the next thing. And then you realize this community cares about its animals. It has a dog a problem, but they're fixing it one step at a time. And so I totally agree. You start to connect these wonderful dots, and you just get excited because you're starting to understand that community more.
So it sounds like to me from both of you, there's a real commitment to the story of why and how and what's important. And a lot of content creators, I think, and a lot of travel writing talks about what to do and doesn't really get into the issues. And there's a few publications that are close to my heart that really do get into the issues. Do you feel a responsibility, or do you incorporate sort of educating the traveler in what you do and how you storytell, the issues that arise? It sounds like you do, but if you could give a couple more examples of, it sounds like, especially Samantha, for the show, it's not just what to do, but the story around what's important and what needs to be addressed. And certainly for you, JoAnna, I'm just curious, do you feel a responsibility to educate that traveler by the way you're telling the story?
Absolutely. The traveler is someone who has money, and you can really make great change in the communities that you're visiting, depending on how you spend that money. So we're going to make sure that you know the best places to show up and to support. One of my favorites, we were in upstate New York, which has famous for its Letchworth State Park. It's an amazing state park. It's known for its 12 massive waterfalls. And we were there a few years ago because they had just opened or broke ground on the only one of its kind in the United States, the Autism Nature Trail. And I just fought because I'm like, I've never heard of such a thing. And it's a 1-mile loop, 7 pavilions, each pavilion featuring a skill or a challenge that someone on the spectrum or anyone with any sort of disability has. But it was a place in deep nature for them. Families could relax because this was a place for them. And on the nonprofit side, 3 women raised $3.5 million to have this in place. And we got to talk to the women. And then on the other side of the traveler, understanding that there's so many different travelers, and people travel with autistic children or they're autistic adults, and there's a place for them, that there is. And so that opens it up to everything, that then even when sort of what they call neurodivergent people access the trail, they get to understand what some of the challenges are. And now you have a better understanding of a child who's maybe acting out, that maybe they're not being selfish, maybe they just have some challenges that they're working through. And so I just thought that travel should be for everyone was so important. And it was so important, a story to tell, that they had just broken ground. Nothing had been done. And I didn't care. I'm like, we're showing up. And you can just walk me through the woods and tell me what's next. And because I just think that people need to know that this is here.
That's great. That's an important component to how do we influence those travelers and those important dollars. So JoAnna, do you feel that responsibility as well? And and I'd like to hear from both of you. What is the response from travelers? Is it picking up? Are you feeling that there's a great interest and yearning for this kind of storytelling?
Yeah, for me, some of the guiding principles that I use in my storytelling, or when I'm thinking about what story to tell, is that I like to think beyond where to why. Instead of just going somewhere, why are we going somewhere? And instead of what are we going to do? I like to ask the question of how we're going to engage in that activity. So I really feel that shift in perspective moves us from the typical travel mindset of going somewhere and doing something and being more intentional in our purpose in going to that place and how we're actually going to engage or think about that. I do see a shift in travelers in wanting these kinds of experiences and being more thoughtful. We see this in what is called the conscious consumer in general, and it is shifting over to the travel space as well. I don't think it is as widely accessible as it should be or could be, alluding back to one of our conversations earlier. And so I do see a huge opportunity here for us to tell those stories at the DMO level as tour operators when we're presenting those stories, when we're putting together the itinerary, thinking beyond the where to the why and thinking about the what to the how, because the desire is there, but it's not always easy to do. And I do hear from the industry side saying, oh, but travelers don't want that, but they just want to sit on the beach. But travelers, honestly, there are a lot of excuses for not doing that hard work. But I think actually that people would be interested if these things were easy and accessible and available. People are going to go out kayaking anyway. So why not also include in that the opportunity to pick up garbage out of the water and learn about the sustainability initiative? Again, people are going to eat anyway. So why not go to All Square in Minneapolis, where you get awesome grilled cheese sandwiches and you're supporting people who have a history with the prison system and the court system and criminal records. Again, travelers are going to eat, sleep, and move anyway. So if we can make it easy for them to participate in this, I 100% think travelers are interested in being engaged in these kinds of experiences.
I think that's a really important point. I don't think there's a traveler out there that doesn't want to do good or wants to be part of the problem. They all want to be part of the solution. We're just not giving them the opportunities to do that. And I think the storytelling around that, the examples that you both are giving, is incredibly important to get that word out and to see how those connections can be made. Are there any other ideas that you sort of have or want to share in terms of how the tourism, how the traveler really has engaged with these nonprofits, and how that story has really resonated with your audiences? I think maybe one of those the top stories that you can think of that really are top of mind that had an impact.
We did back in Houston. We've done 2 episodes in Houston because I fell in love with the city and Houston. So this is a great thing that Houston did. So it's Houston, Texas is the #1 refugee city in the United States. All refugees come through Houston. From there, they wait until they can get their green card, and then they can go off from there. So it has this amazing diverse community of people. And so there was it's called Community Cloth. And it was just a micro initiative program to help refugee women from all over, usually Iraq, Iran, Cambodia. These women, they would create these beautiful artisan goods. And so when we were talking with them, we're like, we'd love to show them. And because we love the idea. So they can be empowered by making their own money as they were putting themselves through nursing school. One woman was, and then she was going to hopefully get her green card in a year. And so we're like, wow, we really love to interact with them. Where can we? And they're like, well, they're in a museum and we can show some of their stuff in the museum. I'm like, we try to stay away from museums. And well, how about, well, they're online. You can get their things online. And then someone just realized, oh, wait a minute, like once a month, they have a pop-up at the community center, but would you like to go there? I'm like, absolutely. Just as long as we have, again, that public face, it's a community center, only locals go there, but why wouldn't a traveler want to show up on that special Sunday or Saturday where you see all these women from all over the world and their beautiful goods that they sell, and this money is going to go towards them and their better, more free life. And so I thought they did it so well. And I think then they became a little more, they would do the pop-ups more often. So that's a great idea. Like if you have this story, if you can't find, a permanent place for a traveler or even the public to interact with it, maybe there's a pop-up where it's like, get to know our nonprofits, get to know like a meet and greet of what's happening. And then go from there and find those people again who can be that, I don't want to say spokesperson, but the person who can be that bridge from the public, the traveler, into that nonprofit, connect those dots so that there's so much vying for our attention. That's just what we need. You need more awareness. You need to shine that, make a big sign here, look at this, and people will come. Because I think, like JoAnna said, people are really interested. They do want to be a part of what makes a community great. They, I think we learned during the pandemic that all of our communities were incredibly vulnerable, and we had to find out who that local artisan was, who was a local musician, how can we support them? Oh, we can listen to their concert, we can go here, and then that just now grew, and now we're taking that around the world. We've understood that we're all just little neighborhoods, and so it's just kind of building upon that strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah,
JoAnna?
Just to build off of that, I think one of the things that we talk about a lot in tourism is this idea that it's an opportunity for people to connect with each other. And absolutely, it's a chance for people to connect with people living in another destination. But I think it's also an opportunity for us to connect with people that are in some way marginalized or on the fringes of society in a way that we wouldn't interact with or encounter these kinds of people in our daily lives. I mean, this is the beauty of travel. We can find those opportunities in our own communities, and we should be doing that. But for some reason, travel seems to kind of open that door and give us the permission to do that in other places. So, along with what Samantha has said, for example, there's a great organization in the UK called My Grateful. It's women who are refugees from all over the world who are offering cooking classes, and they're sharing their experiences as refugees in the UK and sharing the tradition of cooking for their culture, but also, you know, this is a really cool experience when you go to the UK. Again, if we can find these opportunities to connect with people on a very human level, in our travel experiences, we should be making those available to travelers. And if they also benefit organizations and people who maybe have not benefited from tourism in the past, that is a win-win-win for the traveler, for the destination as a travel place, and for, most importantly, I think, for the community and the people who live in the place that call this home.
JoAnna, do you think in your work, have you, because I always wonder, you know, the DMOs, tourism, what we do, we've always had to put a big smile on everything. Everything's okay. Nothing to see here. Everything's wonderful. And I think the DMOs that don't embrace their full story maybe have a fear that they can't show anything that's even slightly negative about where they're from. Oh, if we have a homeless problem, oh no. Oh, if we have, if there was a, you know, a racism, oh, you know, these are things that are really tough topics that I think tourism obviously feels like, oh, we shouldn't be promoting this in any way. And what I would tell them is, please do. It's something we all have. It's something where we all interact with. We all interact with mental illness. We all interact with homelessness, with racial disparity and economic disparity. That's something that we all understand. And so that's not a bad thing. You're showing a sense of vulnerability, but also the strength, and that you're like, we are helping and we are a part of this community that helps everyone. And so that's just, I don't know, JoAnna, if you feel that way. I feel sometimes you get the top 5s, you get that top 10 list, and you're like, I'm going to do none of this because it doesn't resonate with how people want to travel today. They don't want the top 10s and the top 5s. They want to have a personal connection, and that's being vulnerable. And that's hard for all of us. But I feel like, I think that might be at play. What do you think?
Yeah.
We have a couple more minutes, JoAnna, and I'd love to have you. No, we have a couple more minutes, but please respond to that, because I think that's an important point to hone in on and certain to end on.
Yeah. So, you know, I think the narrative that we've told in tourism and about destinations of the past has been very sanitized. It has been very palatable and simple. And, you know, we use words like escape, you know, leave your cares at home and all of these things. And I really, you know, people are waking up to the fact that when you close the door behind you to leave home, you're not leaving behind the climate crisis, inflation costs, challenges with housing. All these things are pervasive around the world. These are global challenges. I think that the opportunity tourism has is to highlight the local solutions. Again, these initiatives, these programs, these change makers who are addressing global challenges on a very local level, and then using tourism as the vehicle to support these initiatives. And, you know, there are really powerful stories out there of travelers who have been changed because they've been introduced to these kinds of experiences. They've taken what they've learned in the places that they visited, and they arrive back home and they start volunteering in their own homeless shelter. They start fundraisers to address the needs of sex trafficking victims in their own home communities. They become aware of how the actions that they take at home have ripple effects around the world. That is the power of tourism. And yeah, it is scary to talk about these global challenges because this isn't the story that we've told in the past from a tourism perspective. But not doing that, quite frankly, is very tone deaf and not acknowledging the greater world that we're all living in, that we're all global citizens in. So I think this is a huge opportunity for tourism, DMOs, tour operators, experience providers, really to embrace the reality of the world that we all live in, that we all play in, and that we all travel in.
Wow. Well, on that note, it is an incredible ending to a very impactful and informative hour. And I thank you both so much. I think we do have this responsibility as an industry to make the world a better place, and certainly to make the world a more sustainable place for tourism. So I want to thank you both so much for your time, and thank everyone for joining us this morning, afternoon, and evening. We are here at Tourism Cares to support this conversation, to support these kinds of opportunities. I know Samantha with the show Places to Love and JoAnna Haugen with Rooted. Please follow them. Please pay attention to what they're saying. They're telling incredible stories, and we're very thankful for their time today. And so with that, we're going to close it down, and I look forward to more conversations with you both, and hopefully work.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was such a pleasure to be with you here today.